church has been under fire for 2,000 years.
And Cliff Harris bobbles the ball into the end zone and recovers and goes out to the 11-yard line.
And our God continues to pull us through the burning flames.
This is why they call this kickoff team the Suicide Squad. Watch 52, Reilly. There goes one. Goodbye.
Everybody in here's got a cross to carry. We've got to stand up in this era of complacency. We've got to hold true to our moral compass. We got to take a stand.
Stuck with it, and out he goes at the 17-yard line.
The Holy Spirit is stronger than anything that can happen to it. We've been here for 2,000 years, and we're going to be here another 2,000 years.
Kevin Reilly.
For the Eagles! For the Eagles! Hit it! Hooray! Hit it! Hooray! Hit it!
Take it away, brother.
Doing great, brother. It's welcome to be back here with all my brethren. As Elizabeth Taylor said to her 8th husband, I won't keep you long. You know, when I'm in the audience like this, I got to get grounded. I still have this thing about the Dallas Cowboys. Do we have any Cowboys in the house? Okay, I'll talk slower for them. I got one quick story for you. I got 11 grandkids now. I love them all. They're unbelievably good. 6 boys, 5 girls. And just a couple of months ago, I'm with my son-in-law, who has his 4-year-old in the back seat in one of the car seats, as he should have. And we're down in the Washington, D.C. area, and he gets pulled over by one of the finer cops in the Washington, D.C. area. And he was speeding, and he's trying to talk the cop out of giving him a ticket. And I'm going like, this isn't going to work. And he was really, she was crying, and I just turned around. I didn't know I was going that fast, and blah, blah, blah. Cop says, listen, I haven't got time for this. I'll knock you back 5 miles per hour. You'll get less of a toll to pay, but you're going to get a ticket. So cop walks back. And my son-in-law, Brian, he's banging on the steering wheel. And from the back seat, May says, Dad, don't worry. This happens to Mom all the time. Yo. You know, one of the greatest things about being alive today and also, you know, being around long enough to see things like your grandkids and all that kind of stuff when you've been through some really tough battles. And, you know, I really have empathy for people who have to go through things as, you know, Mr. Morris did. I mean, that's just unbelievable. But you saw how it turned around when people are happy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But, you know, just give everybody some background. I played at Salesianum High School. We had an undefeated team my senior year. From there, I went on to the very Catholic Villanova University and was captain of the team there and was drafted in the 7th round by the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins in 1973, during that draft, they were coming off the last team to go undefeated in the NFL. And I was very fortunate to be drafted by them. And I just got to tell you, it was unbelievable. I'll tell you a really quick story. I went down, it was in March, and they had all 22 guys that either were drafted, were free agents, or were walk-ons. And nobody knew anybody. But imagine, the world champions had just done a record that has not been topped since then. And I can remember the general manager walking in, giving us what we were going to do over the next 3 days. They were going to time us. They were going to take us through, you know, the weights. They were going to do this. They were going to do that. And then the next thing you know, here comes Coach Shula, and you could hear a pin drop. This guy was just so highly regarded. And I don't remember all of his speech, but he began with, there's 22 of you out here, and I'm going to be totally honest with you. I'm only going to have 3 spots open on a team. I got 2 guys that retired, and 1 guy's going to be out for a whole year because he tore his ACL. So I just want to tell you, if you think the odds are against you, they probably are. And if you don't want to stay here for our great practices, which are 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 in the afternoon, full pads, keep your chin strap buttoned, and we won't have water on the field. And if you feel like you're not going to be able to make that, then I'd ask you to leave tonight. Save yourself some time, save me some time, and we'll be done with it. And 2 guys left that night. And I just said, my goodness, I want to tell you something. I have never been through anything like those practices. And not having water on the field was dangerous, and it was fortunate but not fortunate that 2 collegiate guys died from not having water, and then everything changed all across the board. NFL all the way down to 8th grade football, that to be, have to have water on the playing field. So that being said, I made it down to the very last cut with the Miami Dolphins. And now for the first time in 11 weeks, the veterans are starting to talk to me. They would do everything they could to put, some kind of road in, I want to say rock in your road so you couldn't move on. You couldn't trust anything that came out of their mouths. I'm very vocal, and I'm coming off the playing field after the first practice, and I go up to Manny Fernandez, and I said, Manny, and I just want to make somebody, none of them talk to us. I said, hey, just checking that we have that meeting tonight at 7 o'clock, don't we? He said, no, Rook, you got it wrong. He said, don't you read your stuff at 7:15 and don't be late. Make sure you're there by 7:10. Well, I come straggling in at 7:10, and the meeting was at 7 o'clock, and I just got a $500 fine for being late. Way to start the year off. But anyway, I ended up going to the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was a place that if I had to pick a second place, I wanted to go there. So I was traded to the Eagles, and immediately they put me on the special teams, and by the end of the season, I was backing up some really good people, and then the next year, I was playing all 3 linebacker positions as backups, and I was captain of the special teams. And from there, I was highly recruited. Not really. It's a funny story, and it's too long to tell, but I ended up with 7 games to go playing in New England with the New England Patriots. And that's an opportunity that when I got up there, I was able to start 4 games. The first game that I started, we were getting pressed by the Buffalo Bills, and they had made like 4 first downs in a row, and they were at our 10-yard line. The quarterback for the Buffalo Bills looked at his first choice, his second, his third, and then he tried to throw it over my head as I was covering O.J. Simpson out of the backfield. Well, I played basketball in high school, and I could leap a little bit, and I caught that ball, and I came down, and I just took it down the sideline. And when I got to the 50-yard line, I figured, OJ's on this field somewhere, and he must have the angle on me. I got to pick it up. And you can see in the film that I kick it into another gear. Well, I get down there, and it's a 90-yard, 90-yard touchdown, pick 6 in my first game starting up there, and everybody thought I was wonderful. Well, I tell you what, the guys that saw me in the film room, it really looked funny. I was running for my life. And you can imagine when you have all these guys that want to bust your chops, I was getting it from everywhere. So that's how I made my intro up there. Now I get into the serious thing is I was going to go back and play with the Patriots. They had promised me they'd give me a shot at getting the first string, linebacker position. And it's just around May. It was a great day down in Stone Harbor. I was down there with my dad. Training camp was coming around. And my dad says to me, hey, what's that little thing on your pecs there? I said, I don't know. I said, every time I do curls, it kind of pops out a little bit. My father, always really, really good to tell you the truth, says, you better get that thing checked. I said, I don't think so. I think it's probably just something I tore. He said, get that thing checked. Well, I thought, let me get this done before I have to go up to the Patriots training camp. Well, cutting to the chase, I saw 9 doctors in 3 weeks, and I had 2 of them get together and take out the first one, and it was back in 4 weeks, and they took out the second one that was bigger. Now, I knew that they knew nothing about what this tumor was. And fortunately for me, a great guy that was a friend of mine got me into Sloan Kettering Hospital, which was the greatest cancer center in the world during the 70s. I waited 2.5 hours in this guy's waiting room, and I can tell you, I was getting a little fidgety. Like, I gave up my seat to some lady that came in, and now I'm leaning up against the wall, and I'm looking at my watch. Well, this guy is one of the greatest surgeons in the world, not just our country. And so I was complaining so much, they put me in his office. He had 3 rooms there, and they put me in his office, and my wife was there, and he comes walking in. His name was Dr. Ralph Markov, little Jewish guy, about 5'7", glasses. He comes walking and he shakes my hand. Then he goes over and he picks up my chart, and he holds up my x-rays to the window that's in his office. And I thought, that's unprofessional. You know, what's this guy doing? Puts it down, then he reads, well, the diagnosis from all these doctors is that you have this, and this, but you have none of that. And I said, well, what do I have, doc? And I know I sounded a little smart. And he said, you have a desmoid tumor, and I'll be glad if I can save your arm. And that's how I went. What did he say? I'll be glad if I can save your arm. And then he showed me a patient with a desmoid tumor, and he said, this is why you have to get in there right away. This thing grows overnight, and every time you take it out, it comes back bigger and faster. 1 in a million people get a desmoid tumor, to tell you how rare it was, okay? So I said, well, you've got to go in and get, these guys have already tried to get it out, and he said, they're not going to get it out that way. They've got to go in and systematically go after it. He tried to save my arm, but he took out my clavicle, and it was pretty obvious that I was not going to be playing football anymore. The tumor did come back after his first operation, and he had perfected 250 of these and only had 4 failures, and I was his 5th. And one of the reasons was they didn't have any MRIs in those days, and they couldn't tell how big it was. And when he got in there, it was much bigger. All of my muscle from doing weightlifting had really shrouded how big the tumor was. Well, when that tumor came back, I was in immediate pain from week 1 to week 4. And I called him up and I said, I got to see it on Monday. He said, you can't see me on Monday. I'm in New York Hospital, not Sloan. I said, what time do you want to meet me? At 6:30 in the morning or 5:30? He said, you're not going to let me off, are you? I said, hey, doc, you got to check this thing. It's come up under my armpit. He said, oh, it's probably just a healing. We arranged to meet at 7 o'clock. He comes in, starts busting my chops a little bit. Okay, Dr. Reilly, let me see what you got here. And that's the way he was. He had no bedside manner whatsoever, but I got along great with him. And he lifts up my arm, and he feels under there, and he says, damn it, it's back. And I said, what are we going to do? My father's standing next to me. He had a nurse standing with him that was brand new out of college that he was making the rounds with. He said, well, we're going to have to do the 4-quarter amputation. In order for me to make sure I get the right margins, we're going to have to take your arm, your shoulder, your clavicle, and probably a couple ribs. We've got to get margins in there. And I said, Doc, I said, let's get it done. When can I start? Because the pain was nonstop. I was getting by on 1 hour's sleep. And you know what, that can make you a really royal pain in the ass. And that nurse fainted because our talk was so just matter of fact, but he knew where I was and I knew where he was. Well, the guy saved my life. And the operation lasted 11 and a half hours. I was in ICU for 2 days, and on the 3rd day, they put me back into my hospital room, and I was mobile. I got up, I did my little exercises, just walking, and I was thinking about everything that was going on. It was the first day that I had a clear head, and I'm just prancing around this room. Thank God I had my own singular room. And every time I passed the 3 pictures of my kids, 3, 2, and 1, I started to tear up. Will I be around for them to see them go to 1st grade? Will I be around for them when they're going to high school and college? Will I be around for them when they get married? How will I make this up to them? And I was just beating myself up with all of these thoughts, and I hope he got it all. He's coming a little later to tell me what's happened. I gotta figure some stuff out. I wonder what I'll ever do again, even if I come back with this. You see, I'm sawed off right here. And this is a prosthetic device. If I'm ever in a fight in a bar down here, I lead with this shoulder. You imagine getting up and saying, "Is that your best shot?" Anyway, no kidding aside, this was some serious business. And the first thing that happened was Joan, who was the head nurse, came in and said, "Hey, what's wrong with you today?" I said, "Listen, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to hear anybody on the phone. I don't want any visitors. Do you understand that?" She says, "What, are you going to have a pity party?" I said, "Yeah, maybe I am going to have a pity party." So she left in a huff. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting there and somebody's knocking right on the frame of my door. And I look up and it's somebody I don't recognize at all. And I said to the guy, "Are you in the wrong place?" He said, "You're Kevin Reilly, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." And he had a schmuck and he had a stuff here who said who he was. And he comes walking towards me, and as he gets to me, he says, "Yo," he says, "how you doing?" And I looked up, and he's an amputee. And this long sleeve was just hanging, and the closer he got, he introduced himself. His name was Jack, and he was about 75 years old, and he had his arm removed at his shoulder, and he was there to help me as a volunteer to get through some things and to lay things out for me as how life was going to surprise me. And the first thing he said to me is, "By the way," he said, "have you thought about any exercising? Because that's really gets you back to health early." I said, "I walked down and back once," and I said, on the corridor, "and I'm really like fagged because I haven't done much, but what are you talking about?" I said, "Well, what would you like to play?" I said, "Oh, oh gosh, after this, I don't even know." I said, "I think I could play golf. Don't you think I could play golf one-handed?" He says, "What are you, crazy?" He said, that game's hard enough with two arms. Why would you want to be out there chopping with one arm?" And he said, "Besides that, I know you're a linebacker. I know you'll be trying to kill the ball, and then you'll tear your rotor cuff, and then you'll find out who your real friends are." And he didn't have to paint me any pictures. So then he says to me, "Well, do you think Xerox," who I was working for 1 year, I was working for them, and they picked up the entire bill. That was back in the day when they did those sort of things. And he said, "You think they'll have you back as, a sales manager?" I said, I have no idea." I said, "You know what? I haven't even thought about these things." And he said, "Well," he said, let's talk about it." He said, let's just say they're going to have you back. What do you have to wear to work so I can help you with that?" I said, "I got to wear a suit." I said, "A shirt, tie." And I said, "Dress shoes like you got on. You got those black dress shoes on." I said, "I got a pair like that in my closet." He said, "Not like this pair, you don't." I said, "They only make one kind of that model." And I said, "They're black, and they got the little shiny, or the little skinny, shoestrings." And I said, "I got a pair like that in my pocket." And I'm getting a little like, this guy, what's he bugging me for? And all of a sudden he says to me, "Well, not like this pair." And I said, "How do you figure?" He says, "Well, give me your hand." And I gave him my hand. And he said, "You feel this little tab?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Pull up on it." It was a pad that went over, and all you had to do was pull it back, and it loosened the shoe. And I said, "Oh my God." He said, "Yeah, you're going to have to get a flap like this if you're going to have to wear if you're going to have to wear these shoes." And then he says, "Do you have to wear a tie to work?" I said, "Yeah, it's mandatory." He said, "Well, then I got another big opportunity for you. If you go down to this store, haberdashery, that I belong to, they'll give you a 20% discount if you mention my name. And you have to get the kind of ties that are clip-on, like mine." And then he said, "Pull on my tie." And I was glad he didn't ask me to pull on his finger, but I pulled on his tie, and it was one of those clip-on ties that came off of my hand. And he said, "You'll have to get a dozen of these so you don't have to go back, and everybody has to call me and say, 'Where's that guy again?'" So, when he left there, I was really down. And next thing I know, Dr. Markov is coming into the room. And he comes in, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I mean, like, tell me, did you get it all?" He said, "Yeah, I think I did." I said, "Doc, I don't want to hear, 'I think you did.' The other 9 guys that operated on me, they all thought they did too, and they didn't. He said, you're talking to the boss. I say, I think I got it all. I think I got it all. And he said, by the way, this has never happened to me. Hold on. And he goes out of my room and he comes back and he's got this little sheet. And he says, I told you, I had a phone call with your father 2 days before your operation, and I said it would be helpful if he had family blood, because he's going to bleed out during the operation. We have 22 units of blood in us as human beings, or roughly. And he said, that's something that would probably be more positive than getting it off the streets of New York. And so my dad spread the word a little bit, and it got back to a couple of the guys that I played football with at Salesianum. And he read off their names. And there was 9 of them. Johnny McTanis, Larry Pietropalo, blip, 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 blip. 9 guys. I started to cry again. These guys caravanned up to give me a pint of blood. There were 2 guys on that list I wasn't real happy to have their blood. But, you know, beggars cannot be choosers in those situations. So anyway, he said the right things, and now the nurse comes back in and she says, are you okay? I said, yeah, but you know what? You got to stop anybody from coming into my room. I haven't figured this out yet. I haven't hit the bottom. I'm going to hit the bottom. I know I can, but I haven't hit it yet. I need a day to think through this thing. She said, you're going to have a pity party, aren't you? I said, yeah, maybe I am going to have a pity party. And with that, she walked out the door, and she was back 15 minutes later, and she said, are you going to answer the phone? Guys, I never heard it ringing. I was in another world. I said, I told you I don't want to hear from anybody. Just take the phone call and tell them, you know, that I'm still in an ICU. And so she said, you pick up that phone, or I'm going to come over and kick you in the ass because this is the guy that can help you. Ooh. So I went over and picked up the phone. She was right. It was a friend of mine by the name of Rocky Blyer. For those of you who don't know who Rocky Blyer is, he was a running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers during the same era that I played, but he played through 79. He was drafted to go over to Vietnam, but everybody in the NFL that day, they just went to the National Guard, so they didn't have to get sent overseas. And the NFL had some kind of agreement with the National Guard that they would do that. Well, Rocky decided he was going to go to Vietnam. And I found out later from talking to him before he went over, he said, Kev, he said, I got 2 guys in my neighborhood that are over there right now. And I want to live in Pittsburgh. And I don't want to go around 15 years from now saying, you guys went over and I didn't. If they had to go over, I'm going over. Whew. You talk about guts. So he gets over there. He's doing pretty well until the last 70 days of his tenure over there. And they get caught in an ambush, and he gets shot in the knee by some kind of shrapnel. And he also took off his front toe on his front foot, on his right foot. And he had to have an African-American guy carry him, who was a ball player, who he didn't know. This is another little story after this. He didn't know, but the guy carried him over a mile through mud and muck to a helicopter to get him flown back into Vietnam's, one of their hospitals. And while he was there, they fixed him up pretty good, and they said, now what we're going to do, we're going to fuse the leg at your knee. Oh, he said, no, you're not. And the doc said, what? He said, you can't fuse my leg at the knee. I'll never play football again. And the doc laughed out loud at him. He said, he really embarrassed me. He said, son, where are you living? He said, you will never, ever, ever play another down of football. And he said, and when you have that leg hurting you so bad that you have to have, it frozen at the knee, and God knows what we'll do for something at the big toe, you'll say to yourself, I wished I had done this what the doctor told me. Well, Rocky still wasn't buying that, although he was giving it some serious thought. We talked that day. He says, I'm on my way back. And guess what? He said, Art Rooney gave me a call and gave me a date that they're going to bring 2 surgeons in to take a look at my knee and see if they can get me back on the field. I said, really? He said, yep. Anyway, these 2 doctors came. Rocky went for 2 days with him to do all kind of tests, and they came in to Art, and they said, Art, you know what? He said, this is a guy that comes along once in a lifetime that sets a goal and ends up surprising the world. We know that he's got the mentality, and we'd like to try some of our really new stuff on him, and he's agreed to it. So Art calls him in and says, Rocky, it's your call. He said, I'll put you on the roster for 2 years, but after 2 years, you got to come to training camp. And if you make the team, great, and if you don't, we can all say, well, we tried as hard as we could. Well, not only did Rocky make the team, he has 4 Super Bowl rings, okay? And if you count his yards catching and count them with rushing, during the 4 years that they won the Super Bowl, he even outdistanced Franco Harris because of the catching. Franco was not a great pass catcher. So anyway, he's on the phone with me. We talked. I told him how upset I was, how down I was. And he said to me, you must promise me something. He said, you must promise me that you will give this an opportunity to be positive. Now I'm listening to a guy that I can listen to. And I said, Doc, what do you mean by that? I don't know where I'm going next. I don't know if they got it all. He said, well, that'll come. It's there now. Don't worry about it. You're worrying about it won't make it go away if it's there, and if it's there, So anyway, he said to me, I want to ask you one thing. I want you, and this is a guy, by the way, Catholic to Catholic. He was a Notre Damer. I was a Villanova guy, and we got each other. We knew what it was like. And he says to me, I know you've got the same mental strength that I have, but it hasn't been tested, but you're at the door of opportunity. I'm going to ask you one thing. I'm going to ask you to go and do PT as much as you can. I want you to get back into work. I want you to stop feeling sorry for yourself, and I want you to keep in touch with me. And I said, Doc, Rock, I love you, but I don't know. He said, I want you to do those things, and one more part of the promise, and I'm going to write it and send it to you. You must try whatever you're trying to accomplish 12 times before you give up. I said, Rock, come on. That's silly stuff. How about 3 times? He said, nope, 12 times. You'll be amazed at how many times at 9 and 10 that you win. And if you don't win by 11 or 12, I say, we lost. So I did that, and I knew he would call me back. And when he called me back after about 6 months, he said, tell me what you're doing now. I know you're out of PT. And I told him, hey, I'm doing some weightlifting. I'm doing some running. I said, I've just gotten done a 5K, and I'm setting my standards on getting into a half marathon and maybe someday a full marathon. And he said, that sounds like a plan to me. He said, but I'm telling you right now, I don't want you calling me saying you gave up on something. Doing the Thai routine, it took me number 9. If I'd have given it up after 3, I wouldn't have showed it to you, okay? And every time I think of him, and I'm pressured, not pressured by myself actually, but I try to keep, I'll do it 12 times. And if I don't make it, I don't make it. I went on to have a really great corporate career at Xerox. And from there, after I retired, I did a lot of speaking engagements across the country. And I was so thankful to be alive. I was thankful that this tumor did not come back. And I was on the board of the Desmoid Tumor Research Foundation. We were trying to find a cure for this. 2 women in New York City, they set up our system, and I told them, don't get too don't get too objective about this. It's going to be hard to stay the course when you don't have a lot of people around you and making money. Because in order to make money to find out a cure for this terrible disease, you had to pay a lot because you had to go through a session where they had test pilots that would go in and they'd get desmoid tumors. And this was before the internet, so you couldn't even get it out there that we needed them in order to do whatever science we needed to do. Well, to make a long story short, I joined them, and I kept saying, this is going to last about 1.5 years, and then it'll go downhill, and there won't be any foundation. But I'll give it a shot. Rocky would tell me to do that. Well, on November 27th, 2024, I got the phone call from SpringWorks, who was doing the work, that we had found a cure for the desmoid tumor. It is shrinking tumors in people's bodies that has been roaring against their muscles. The poor ladies who get it chest high and it keeps growing. I mean, this is just more than, something out there pathological. This is also has to do with who you feel like you are, and this is just incredible. Now, more incredible than that, they call the two ladies that started this, they called them the little engine that could. They didn't take no from an answer from anybody. And that's what I think happens when you're in New York. You get hardcore with, you got to help me. And people did help us. Now, not only do we have the pill that is shrinking the tumors, but now the Cancer Society of America has asked us to come in and work with other sarcomas. And what's the benefit of that? I'll tell you what the benefit is. The benefit of that is we don't have to go through any trials. If it's FDA approved, you can have a trial, you can have a group of people try them right away. And so far, we've helped with one sarcoma. So I tell you that because out of really bad things, sometimes some good things happen. And I'm just lucky to be here, and I know you've heard enough about religion. By the way, Father, who was on before me, I just found out he knows Cozy Morley. Because those jokes are a lot along the line of Cozy Morley's, and you know. But I gave you all of that to lead up to this, that this has been, a crusade for me to help other people. And I got these statistics a little bit, and I just want to read them to you. They're very discouraging, and I want to encourage you after this. Here is a statistics reveal the depth and breadth of the crisis that we have with the Catholic Church right now. More than 50 million Catholics in the United States have stopped practicing their faith over the past 30 years. More than half of all American adults raised Catholic, 52%, have now left the church. Only 8% say returning. We have closed a Catholic parish in the United States every 3 days for the past 35 years. We have closed a Catholic school in the United States every 4 days for the past 25 years. 3,500 parishes in the United States, as of today, are without a resident priest. Well, if that doesn't sound like we're going down the tube, I don't know what will. But we are here today, and to see this turnout made my heart jump. This is what we need. We all need to get involved in this. And how do I do it? Well, the first thing is seeing what you can do to help people. This is unbelievable, but you just think that, well, let me ask this question, because I was going to ask it anyway, and I'll get on. How many people over 60 here? Raise your hands. How many people over 50? How many people over 30? How many people here are 25 years old and younger? What's wrong with this program? What do we have, a dozen hands go up? God bless you guys for being here. You're getting the word. This is what we have to do. We have to be true Christians. And I want to tell you, I've been in some circles. I guess it's my linebacker mentality. I try to be kind to everyone, even though they're annoying me. I try to listen. I become a better listener. And I'm really trying this Lent to have patience. And I'm talking about the situations. I'll give you one example. We have to stop internalizing stuff and not saying what we really believe to people who need to hear it. For instance, I'm at a gala about 4 years ago, and I'm talking to about 5 guys, and we're talking sports. And I see this woman walking over to me, and she's highfalutin, and I could just say, oh, here comes trouble. And she comes in, and she introduces herself, and you could see she was all full of herself and all that kind of stuff. And she says at the very end, she says, oh, by the way, she said, I want you all to vote. I want you all to vote Republican and Democratic, and we're going to stop this new rule they have out, and we're going to get back to aborting babies and keeping gals healthy enough so that they can lead normal lives. And I looked at my guys, and nobody said a thing. I said, I totally disagree with you. She said, on what purpose? I said, I'm only an old football player, but I do know this. I do know that a beating heart is a killer. A beating heart is crushed in these operations, and that means you've killed someone. Oh, no, it doesn't. They haven't. I said, don't get into that with me. She followed me around. But I want to tell you something. I know I left something in her brain because we need to step up and say, we don't believe in that. Okay? So anyway, I just want to follow up with this, and maybe I'll take one or two questions. But I want to follow up with it because this is the time. This is the time of Lent when you strive forward. This is the time when you set some goals. This is the time when you hold yourself responsible. And always think about the people who are looking at us as Catholics. There was a time I walk around my neighborhood saying the rosary, and I would see somebody coming and I'd hide it. I said, what am I doing that for? Who cares? Maybe I'll turn somebody on with it. And I just say that to you because there's these little things that we need to stop now. And one thing I know for sure, Jesus Christ will not abandon us. And I take this to the grave with me. As he said to St. Peter, St. Peter, upon this rock you will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. That's a promise. But we don't want to be the losers of somebody in the next 3 generations that has to bring back the church. We need to start now. We need to start right now. Thanks for having me here today. Think about it. Think about trying things 12 times. Think about pushing yourself just a little bit. And whatever you do, just say your prayers. I mean, Father was right, man. Nobody's had more people from heaven visit him than anybody in this room, all right? So, my gosh, it woke me up a little bit. The one thing I'll leave you with before I see if anybody wants to answer a question or two, but, it's really something being in this situation. But the one thing that I really grasp and hold true is the only thing that we really take with us when we die is what we give to others. And if you have kindness, and I see it all over, people come up to me to try to help me because I got one arm. And you know what? I'll let them if I need them. And if I don't, I say, hey, thanks. Thanks for doing that, but I got this. I've been practicing. And we get into a little conversation. Being patient in this day and age is almost impossible without drugs. Because there's some people that can really piss you off. Well, let's try to do well with that. And the third thing is, let's start spreading this gospel to the men in your family, okay? And what I want you to do, as I have started to do, is I do my sales routine is I'll ask a question and they give me an answer and I'll say, that's interesting, and shut up. Force them to talk again. I find out that by the 3rd or 4th time you say, really? And then they get to the heart of the problem. And you'll be amazed at what they tell you. Yeah, the priests that are living in another century, I don't get all that stuff. There's nobody teaching catechism in some of the schools, even though the religious are gone. So I just hope that in your travels and during this Lent, you have a great Lent. Please give a prayer for me. I need it. And as they would say, if you get to heaven before I do, bore a hole and pull me through. Thank you very much.
Kevin Reilly. Come on, brothers. Give it up. Kev, before you go, Kev, come on out here.
Make me cry, man.
Let's try that one more time.
So, Kev, last time you were here, you and I talked, and you were going to teach me how to tie that with one. I gave up on the 7th time, so I'm going to come back and we'll try it again. But I wanted to give you something here, Kev, because we don't hear people mention the rosary that much anymore. We had Eddie Moe mention it this morning. So we happen to have just one left that Pope Francis, and then in August, Pope Leo, another Villanova graduate, blessed for us. So I wanted to give that to you, brother. Love you, Kev.
I went to school with Pope Leo, but he doesn't know it. I was a senior when he was a freshman at Villanova.
Well, we're going to ask him. He'll remember Kevin Reilly, the linebacker. You know? I know my cuz does. Thank you. Kevin Reilly, one more time.